Thanks very much. If you tell us who you are and what you do.
Oh, okay. I'm Nick Booth. I'm a range of different things. I'm principally the managing director of Podnosh, which is a company I set up in 2005. And what we do is we work with community groups, voluntary groups, charities and the public sector to help them use the web to grow the civic conversation. What we're interested in is more people being involved in a much wider civic conversation in all sorts of different ways. So one of the predominant tools that we use are things called social media surgeries, where we are skilling up active citizens and community groups to use the web better. We've also built what I call an impact assessment app, which allows workers who are working with the people that get called hard to reach to capture their voice and to understand how they're experiencing the world. But also we work with the various bits of the NHS and various bits of central and local government, trying to shift their head to start tuning into these conversations, joining in and being part of them, rather than simply thinking if they do a consultation every 3 years that they've nailed it.
Now this wasn't quite a question I'd written down, but it occurs to me as you speak, the context of some of this. Do you think it goes back to the kind of policy discussions around the power of information report, if you remember that? What was that, 2006, 7?
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to, just occurred to me, actually, I'm not sure I've got a question about what's the policy context that has allowed you to be in this space?
Well, I don't know. I think two things were happening simultaneously. So I was accidentally experimenting with this stuff by making podcasts and teaching people how to make their own podcasts and saying to people all the time, stop pandering to the press, stop allowing other people to control your message, just here's the tools to do your own thing. So I was doing that, but at the same time, Power of Information, which is Tom from My Society, Will Perrin, who's I've been involved with for a long time, were very instrumental of that. In that, that did do in central government was it opened up a lot of eyes. It didn't really open up many eyes in local government or even in organisations like housing associations or the NHS or other places. You know, it had been a slow trickle through. And I think that the change in government has happened because they are increasingly experiencing the lack of control and the chaos that comes from everybody being able to communicate. And some of them have started to understand that this is an opportunity for them, and others are still wondering what on earth is going on. So, but definitely the Power of Information Task Force, and also, I mean, following on from that, I'm on the Department for Communities, Local Government, Local Data Panel, which is a direct result of the Transparency Board set up, which is a direct line from the Power of Information Task Force.
Yeah. So let's focus on the surgeries then. So just how they came about and at what level they're at now.
They came about as a result of an online conversation which Tom Watson sort of triggered amongst the Birmingham bloggers. There was, on the 15th of October 2008, something called Blog Action Day. And the subject of Blog Action Day, which is an American initiative, that year was going to be poverty. And I remember months before, Tom Watson tweeted something saying, "What are you bloggers going to do about this then?" And various conversations went round and round. And Pete Ashton had been running what he called social media surgeries as sort of to help his business. And basically what was going on was that people would often ask him to give them free social media advice. So he created this very simple mechanism which said, if I'm in this place at a certain time, you can rock up for free. But it allowed him after to say at any other point, that's where you get the free stuff. If you want me outside that time, you have to pay. Very simple mechanism. And he kept it very simple. And so the conversation went round and round, and I just sort of realised I had these two networks, one of which was the Birmingham bloggers group that I'd set up the original Facebook group, and collectively we'd all got involved with each other, and also the sort of 50 or 60 active citizens I'd interviewed through the Grassroots podcast channel. And so I just thought, well, I wonder if the bloggers can help the active citizens be more effective, and if they can help them be more effective, it's the active citizens who might do something about alleviating poverty. So I'm really lazy organiser. I really hate people paying for space and stuff, because my experience is that's why things don't happen, because you've got to find 30 quid or whatever. So I made a few phone calls, blagged a room at BVSC where there was tea and coffee and Wi-Fi, and sent out emails to the people from the Grassroots channel and sent a message to the Birmingham bloggers group and said, please turn up and just talk to each other. And that's exactly what happened. And about 40 people turned up. It was only ever supposed to be one. But when we went to the pub afterwards, the bloggers, they really enjoyed themselves. They'd sat next to really interesting people and helped them. And the process is very open. You just sit next to somebody and you ask them who they are, what they're about, what they're trying to achieve, and then you start showing them things that you think are relevant that might help them, and you keep showing them stuff until they go, oh, that's interesting, or until you find the thing that really seems to. Well, that's when it was at the time, because nobody had Facebook pages then or blogs and people set up a lot of sites. So, but what really happened was, because it was so enjoyable, the blogger said, can we do that again? And because I'm a lazy organiser, the short answer was, actually, yes, there's stuff all to organise. So I just organised another and another. But at the same time, other people elsewhere in the country, through Twitter, could see that we were having an enjoyable time. And they got on trains and came to help us, realised this was easy, went back to their hometowns and started setting them up. And from that, steadily, what happened was it grew. So now there either are or have been social media surgeries in 153 different places, including 7 different countries. There's been a social media surgery in Kathmandu. I know, but these numbers under measure what's really happened. I know of 4,500 individuals or organisations that have benefited directly from them. As a movement, we've won. We're still not an organisation, it's a movement, but we've won a Big Society Award, we've won an award from the BBC, we've won awards from Oxford University and the European Union for innovation in a network society. And they're still, the one thing I've fought to protect over the years is that they are still remorselessly simple, because people want to formalise and turn it in and say, what's the curriculum and what should I teach and how do I do this? And I just say, no, find a space, find some people, sit down together and learn from each other.
Yeah, I must go and find that whatever back of a receipt picture where you listed the things it's on your blog.
It's called, if you search for Podnosh and recipe, you'll find it. Yeah.
So just so who are the surgeons and who are the patients?
So the original surgeons were people who had a reasonable knowledge of how the web works. And I knew that because I knew them through the Birmingham bloggers group. So we've been linking to each other and blogging and stuff like that. And the original set of patients were people who do a whole range of things. So for the Grassroots channel, I'd been talking to mostly small community groups and individual active citizens. But these are people in their community who either run things like neighbourhood forums or local neighbourhood watches or small charities, or they just do things in their neighbourhood. They could be the person. But the core thing for me was that you can show people how to use the web, and that's fine, but it's, in terms of growing the civic conversation, it's much better to show people who already know what they're trying to achieve. They've already created their own sort of voice. They just haven't yet been offered the tools to amplify it, because they know what they care about, they know what they're trying to get done. And if you can give them the tools to share that with more people, I think they can get more things done. And they can also connect to each other more. And broadly speaking, as the surgeries have grown, it's carried on being like that. It's local, digitally savvy people offering support to those who are active citizens. Those lines blur a lot, though. And one thing I learnt very early on, which really surprised me, but it shouldn't have done, was because the process was really simple and generous, somebody sits down next to somebody, takes an interest in them and helps them, that those who were originally receiving the help very early on started wanting to pass it on. So because there'd been no transaction, nobody was fussing, I had Karen Kane, who runs the Central Birmingham Neighbourhood Forum, received help at the first 3 surgeries. She turned up at the 4th and I said, how can we help you this time, Karen? And she just said, no, I'd like to help somebody else, please. And that really made me understand the power of this, because it made me realise that the experts don't need to be you don't need much expertise to do it. And also the idea of an expert is a bit nonsense anyway. To help somebody understand how to use Facebook or blog, you just need to be a couple of steps ahead of them. Or, better still, you need to be willing to sit down with them and work it out together if you don't know the answer. And then the surgeries have also evolved, because they went from a mostly voluntary thing to forming quite a core part of our business. So now we run neighbourhood surgeries where you get public servants like people who work for the NHS, the local police, local council officers, and active citizens learning alongside each other and from each other. So you might have Mrs. Miggins, who runs the neighbourhood forum, teaching PC Plod how to use Twitter, which is just fantastic, because what they're doing is building relationships, real relationships that are really going to make a difference in the community. And they're also, they get this much stronger sense that social media isn't a thing that experts do or that is done unto you, but it's a thing that you can play with and experiment. And it is all about conversation. So learning through conversation makes a big difference.
Yeah, because one of the things, because the surgery model, in that sense, implies expert and non-expert.
Yeah.
And yet you're kind of countering that. You're kind of saying that's not how it works in reality. So, so in a way, what's in the model? Why is the headline still surgery when the tangible experience of it, you're kind of saying, doesn't work in those kind of ways? Because you would think of not just doctors but also MP surgeries, where it's very much I am helpless, you help me.
Actually, and the reason why Pete called it a social media surgery, and the reason why I think it's a surgery, is to do with a local counsellor. But the point about a local counsellor is they don't know what's going to walk through the door. So you can turn up and ask them anything and explain your situation, and they will see what they can do to help. And I think that's the relationship. So you wouldn't have a social media surgery about Facebook, just as you wouldn't have a counsellor's surgery about planning. It's about who are you, what's your issue, can I help you? And then it did just sort of evolve. So at one of the B31 ones, police community support officer turned up, and I gave him about 20 minutes of help, because he wanted to look at the way he was using Twitter, and I talked to him a bit about the fact that you're using it in quite a broadcast way, and can you follow more real people, talk to them, interact more. And then, because we were busy, somebody else wanted to learn about Twitter from scratch, so then he became the surgeon. But he was then sitting there, and his instinct at this surgery was, this is brilliant, I get to understand and talk to and relate to the people that I want to police with and police for. And often the conversation around social media is sort of a bit of a proxy for simply relating better to each other. And you get very, very, the conversations that really matter are the ones where two people are leaving saying something like, I've got to get that proposal in for that grant next Tuesday, but if you can now email me that thing, we'll incorporate your Friends of Walker's Heath Park in it or whatever, and we'll see what we can do together.
Because in a way, it doesn't, going back to that, it situates social media as a solution, and yet I suspect you'd say that it's not. Social media isn't situated in that way in every conversation that happens.
No.
So you might go expecting I'm going to learn some stuff about social media because social media is the answer. Yeah. And so what is learned then if that isn't quite what's learned?
So you get that quite a lot. You get people turning up saying, I've come because somebody's told me I should be using Facebook. And so what the most important thing people learn, there are two most important things that people learn. One is that you achieve more if you talk to people. Another is, if you're going to talk to people, try and figure out what's the most appropriate way to talk to them. And the third one is, and that expert who's sitting there, they learned all this by experimenting and Googling. So if you're not sure, you can do one or two things. You can either experiment and Google, or you can come back and we'll help you some more. So that's also about, there's nothing right about this. This is an ongoing experiment, and we're all experimenting. So we do, I do this quite a lot, either at surgeries or in other parts of my work. Sometimes people will be saying they want this, that and the other, and blah, blah, blah. And when you really get down to it, it turns out that there's a slightly distorted relationship between one person and another. And you will sometimes say, well, why don't you start by going and having a cup of tea with them? And that sort of doesn't happen very often. But really what you're trying to do is get communities talking to each other in productive ways so that they build trust, and then they use that trust to make new things happen.
So, thank you very much. So just thinking about the surgeries we did together. I think I was trying to think. Well, B31 seems really connected. I wonder who would come out of the woodwork if they made a call for surgery participants and try to say, if you're active or interested. Now, I'm not quite sure that happened. Although I'm going to speak to the knitted knocker lady tomorrow.
Yeah.
Which is a good example of the potential of that. But I wonder if you've got anything to say about the links between the way the surgeries work and the networks they kind of engender or create the networks, the kind of people they pull in, and the way hyperlocals work as still predominantly kind of broadcast models of communication. And I'm trying to get you to answer the question I can't answer, which is what happens if those two work in tandem? Are there links between successful hyperlocals and successful networks of active citizens who might benefit from surgery type interventions?
I think it's very, very circular. So we have 3 surgeries. We know that several hyperlocals have sprung up out of surgeries. We also know that in Cardiff, for example, when I've forgotten her name, used to work for me, went on to the Guardian. Hannah, who set up your blog. Hannah went to Cardiff and she helped nurture a few hyperlocal blogs there and was doing her own hyperlocal Guardian stuff and was running surgeries, and I taught her how to run surgeries when she worked for me. And so she could see a very strong link between... the link is really complicated. So sometimes a surgery can be the sort of place where somebody gains enough confidence to start doing something that either becomes a hyperlocal blog or set out as a hyperlocal blog. Marty said to me at the last surgery, he said to me, this is all your fault, this B31 thing. So I don't quite know what it is, but they think that somehow I encouraged them or made, I don't know, but there was something about the stuff they were doing. So that sprang out of that. But so what's the tangible stuff? So the thing about a hyperlocal blog is it tends to be, most of the relationship is online, and the beautiful thing about social media surgery is it's a lightweight way of getting the online relationships into the real world. So and often if you say to people, let's network, that's sort of I think practical people often won't go to network, but if you say, let's sit down and learn something together, more people might turn up, or more practical people might turn up. So I think it helps with that. In terms of the ones that we did, I don't think there was anybody there that I think of as part of my network. So Steph and I were both advertising them. You were advertising them a little bit. Did you think there was anybody there from your network?
Oh God, no.
So my assumption is...
Andy turned up, that was about it. Only moment turned
yeah,
up.
but we'd asked him to come along because we needed an extra pair of hands. So my assumption is, and I know that the people that Sass and Marty were helping at the last one to set up a blog for their community centre had only come because B31 had said. So I think about 3/4 of them were there because of B31 social capital, and I think a couple of others were there because we'd done some work in the rest of South Birmingham with Austin Rodriguez, and he saw this extra opportunity and he whacked it out to his network. And I think in the end, my experience of things like BCC DIY, that website that got rebuilt, things like John Bound's Big City Plan blog, is that those things only really work if you are connected both online and offline. That the real relationship, that the real trust starts to happen when people meet each other, but that the online stuff then makes it much easier to organise and amplify that trust. So I think it's a very lightweight way for a hyperlocal blog to broaden its network into the real world, to get more people involved, possibly even find more people who might help them write the blog, to do something relatively lightweight. Nikki Getgood, who ran the blog in Digbeth, used to run the Digbeth social media surgery, and all she used to do is go to her nearest pub and sit there at 7 o'clock in the evening until about 8:30, and if one person turned up, that was good enough.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think something interesting did happen. I can't quite work it out yet, but I think it did reveal some people who, I know, has created some confidence in them. I think there's 2 people there who's created a level of confidence about them, about the way they talk about the web. And I, in the second surgery, I was talking to one woman, and I could see her almost begin to work against me and my view of what we should do. I was sort of simplifying. And
were you being overly broadcast or something, or?
Okay, what was it you said about me at the end of?
No, because you talk a lot about content. I talk a lot about relationships.
Yeah.
So we're having different conversations with people about the same stuff.
Yeah. And that was quite interesting. No, I was trying to simplify, and she was saying, but pictures are the only thing I'm good at. Kind of almost kind of saying, don't take away all the pretty bits. I like it, that's the thing I like, and it was quite interesting, kind of. But anyway, so just a bit about you want to be gone by Happers, don't you? Is that about right? Happers?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a little bit about capital. So you mentioned the word social capital, and as an academic, we got interested in the notion of capital. So I think I think you'd be good to get a comment on what's the reward, what's the point of doing this, and I'm specifically thinking of the surgeons. What are they getting from coming?
Okay. They keep coming back, and they're very and they keep coming back. They get it. There's this thing called social glow, which is a hashtag called social glow, and it sort of emerged on Twitter. But when the early surgeries were growing, you would see people running a social media surgery or being part of one, being a surgeon, then afterwards just talking about what a lovely time they'd had. So there is something very powerful about being able to help somebody who in turn is going to probably go on and help somebody else. It's just very tangible feeling of, I'm helping somebody. Actually, I'm going to sound really... I was going to say, that is doing something that you think is worthy. But anyway, that sounds really judgmental. It sounds like there's worthy help, there's worthy poor and unworthy poor. Don't use that bit. Okay, so there is something really simple about the fact that you get pleasure out of sitting next to somebody, meeting them, learning about them, and helping them. And I think fundamentally it is nothing more complicated than that. One of the surgeons that comes to Central Birmingham used to come, and now she's realised that she never thought she was a volunteer, and now she realises that she is a over, and this is her volunteering. And she likes the fact that by accident she's grown that part of her life. I think also you learn as much as you teach. So by trying to solve people's problems, you're stretching your understanding of what you do, or you're stretching the tools you use. And also people talk to you about it in ways that you're not used to. So they will say, does that mean blah? And half the time if you go, no, actually half the time you stop and think, oddly enough it does, but I never thought of it that way. So they are helping you think differently about what it is you do. So you go away. But also, and they're not as social as they used to be. It used to be quite traditional that you would nip off to the pub afterwards. We don't do that as much, but people always like that. And some people would turn up at the end of surgeries to go to the pub. And I think I get out of it just feeling that I belong to a network, feeling like I belong to a group of people. I think, if 2 people meet somewhere and it turns out that they're both social media surgeons, they've got a connection. They've got an automatic connection. But I don't think it needs, because the other thing that is good about it is nobody's imposing anything on you. Nobody's saying you have to do this preparation, or you have to teach in this way, or you have to be anything. You can just come and be yourself and do your best to help somebody. So in some ways, the process isn't trying to take anything from you or prescribe anything to you, but it is giving you an opportunity to do something enjoyable.
And just final question then, is they don't seem particularly political. There doesn't seem to be anti-establishment feel to them. They don't seem to represent an alternative politics. And is that deliberate or accidental, or not something that's ever entered the equation? When the surgeons surge, when they do their stuff, I don't think they are presenting, and this is going to stick it to the man when you do this. I'm going to show you the tools that will, There doesn't seem to have that feel to them.
No, and I think that's because if there are any politics, they sit in the active citizen who's getting the help, and all the surgeon is, or if the surgeon is thinking this way, all they're thinking is, and actually what they are thinking, because if you think about the network effect, they're thinking, I'm here because of a network of people that, broadly speaking, I trust, and I assume the person sitting opposite me is here because they have a connection to the same sort of network of people who broadly trust. So I'm not going to question the values of why we're here. I'm just going to assume that because so-and-so knows so-and-so who knows so-and-so, and I know them vaguely, we're probably all right. So then they just concentrate on, how can I help you? What's the most useful thing I could do for you? So I think my assumption was always that that if there was anything political going on, it would be in the activities of the active citizens. And somehow, and I don't know why, I partly know why. I think it's been defended quite robustly because so many people have tried to tell me that the surgeries ought to be organised in certain ways. And so people used to say to me, you ought to do separate surgeries for counsellors. Because the one thing it is more political than I remember now. The one thing I said early on is that politicians are not welcome. And the reason for that was, actually, if somebody's going to volunteer their time, politicians and businesses are not welcome. So businesses are not welcome because if I'm being paid to provide social media support in my real world, if you rock up and say, please help me make profit out of it, I would expect you to be charged for that. And politicians, it was because somebody's coming along and giving their help for free, and I don't want them to be sitting next to somebody and feeling obliged to help somebody that they'd rather not. So it could be somebody from a far right party, or it could just be somebody that they disagree with. So actually, I think early on, I tried to remove the problem of should money be changing hand and the problem of politics right at the beginning, to be honest. And I've forgotten about that, but I still hold those lines. And people will often tell me you're wrong about that, and I will just ignore them. Because it's sort of like, it's, how can we be wrong? We're doing a thing, we're doing it the best way we are, we're trying to make the rules simple enough so that it keeps working. And what you need to do that is to take away the reasons why people would go, that pisses me off.
Yeah, a good question is to make you remember something you didn't realise you were going to remember. Yeah. I'm going to let you go because you need to go.